Prime Minister said repeatedly that he had no knowledge of funds from the dictatorship in Beijing going to federal election candidates. Today we learned that is not true. His department prepared a briefing that said a large clandestine transfer of funds earmarked for the federal election from the PRC in Toronto was transferred to an elected provincial government official via a staff member of a 2019 federal candidate. Why did the Prime Minister say the opposite of what he knew to be true?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, the issue of foreign interference in our democracies and our institutions is extraordinarily serious, and that's why, as a government, we have always taken it incredibly seriously, including by building and creating new mechanisms to oversee and to ensure that we can counter that interference and demonstrate to Canadians that they can have confidence in their institutions. But on the specific question, as both myself and the NSIA stated last fall, we have no information on any federal candidates receiving money from China, and that continues to remain the case.
Hear, hear. Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Well, that is impossible, because not only did his own department prepare a briefing for him which said that candidates had received funds, so did his own security committee, which said, and I'm quoting now from Global News, Global News also learned of an earlier high-level warning about clandestine funding of China's preferred candidates that came from a bipartisan panel of parliamentarians 2 months before the 2019 election. That so-called bipartisan panel is the Prime Minister's secret committee. They report to him. He knew. Why did he say the opposite of what he knew?
Yeah. Right Honourable Prime Minister.
As I said last fall, as the National Security and Intelligence Advisor stated, we have no information on federal candidates receiving money from China. That continues to be the case. In regards to the National Security and Intelligence Committee of Parliamentarians, Mr. Speaker, I'm happy to correct the honourable member and highlight that committee actually publishes reports to Parliament and to the public. That is something that is very, very clear. It's a committee of parliamentarians that get top secret clearance so they can look at everything our intelligence committees do and then report back to our Parliament.
Well, Leader of the Opposition.
Well, the Prime Minister stated another falsehood. He said it reports to public. Many of its findings are not reported to public. And second, Section 21 of the Act that creates that committee states that its reports go to the Prime Minister. They have to go to the Prime Minister. And he is the one that decides what becomes public thereafter. Therefore, he knew when that committee reported that candidates received money directed by the dictatorship in Beijing, and yet he has been and continues to say exactly the opposite. Why?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, parliamentarians can now go to the Library of Parliament or go online and see reports from the National Security and Intelligence Committee of Parliamentarians that were released publicly to them. The National Security and Intelligence Committee of Parliamentarians, which the previous Conservative government opposed as an oversight body, actually allows parliamentarians to attain those top secret clearance levels to look into everything our intelligence agencies do and report back to Parliament, to me, to Canadians on how that's working.
Hear, hear. Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Section 21 of the Act that creates that secret committee says, and I quote, each year the committee must submit to the Prime Minister a report of the reviews it conducted during the preceding years. In other words, he did receive the report. He should stop playing word games. Nobody needs to go to the library. What we need to do is get to the truth. The Prime Minister knew that his own security committee said Beijing had directed funds to candidates in preceding elections, and yet he continues to say exactly the opposite. Is he saying that the committee is lying?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Mr. Speaker, I'm happy to clear up the confusion around what the committee reports. Yes, the committee reports to me and to the government, but it also reports to parliamentarians and shares those reports. So this is the way many committees function in our government, and will continue to. In regards to the issue of whether federal candidates received money from China, as I've stated many times, we have no information on that.
Leader of the Opposition.
We all agree the Prime Minister has seen the report. Well, this is what Global News says of the report. Global News has learned of an earlier high-level warning about clandestine funding of China's preferred candidates that came from a bipartisan panel of parliamentarians 2 months before the 2019 election. China gave money to its preferred candidates. The Prime Minister admits that the committee reported to him on this fact. Why does he continue to state the diametric opposite of the truth in his answers in this House of Commons?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I think we all understand how important it is that Canadians can have both confidence in our government's ability to counter foreign interference and confidence in the transparency and openness with which that happens. And that's why, Mr. Speaker, beyond the partisan to and fro that we necessarily see in this House, it is important to create an independent, unimpeachable special rapporteur who is going to be able to oversee the entire landscape around national security to make sure that the committees are doing their work, that the various bodies keep Canada safe.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Has CSIS warned the Prime Minister, his staff, members of his party, that members of his caucus or cabinet are part of a foreign interference network? Yes or no?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Canadians well know that issues of national security and foreign interference can often be highly sensitive, which is why we have created bodies like NSICOP and NCIRA and other mechanisms to oversee the important and top secret work that our intelligence agencies do, to make sure that they're doing everything necessary to protect Canadians, to make sure that governments are held accountable for acting on information they could have received from our intelligence agencies. These are processes that we have put in place since 2015 that we will continue to work with.
Leader of the Opposition.
Yes or no?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we well know that issues of national security can be highly challenging to discuss as parliamentarians in the open floor of the House of Commons, which is why, over the objections of the former minister in the Harper government that objected to the creation of a National Security and Intelligence Oversight Committee, who's now the Leader of the Opposition, we went ahead and created a body that allows members of Parliament to get cleared to top secret levels so they can look into this question and all questions in a way that doesn't compromise national security.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Yes or no?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, issues around national security have deep implications for the safety and well-being of Canadians and those who serve to keep Canadians safe, sometimes in extraordinarily dangerous positions here and around the world. That's why we've created bodies that allow parliamentarians to get that top secret clearance so they can look directly at everything is done without putting at risk the brave women and men who serve this country to keep all Canadians safe.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
CSIS warned the Prime Minister's office 3 weeks before the 2019 election there was at least one candidate it identified as implicated in a foreign interference network. Is that member in the Prime Minister's caucus or cabinet, yes or no?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we have created formal processes where parliamentarians from all parties, including from that member's own party, can get top secret clearances to look into matters impacting on national security and the safety of Canadians without putting at risk the women and men who serve in our intelligence communities here in Canada and around the world to be able to continue to do their jobs of keeping Canadians safe. And I know no one in this House wants to put anyone who serves this country at risk.
Which staff members in the Prime Minister's office did CSIS brief that there was a Liberal candidate implicated in a foreign interference network? Their names.
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I've addressed a number of questions, a number of answers along the lines of national security, but I do want to point out another issue that I know is preoccupying for Canadians. Just recently, Conservative Party MPs knowingly dined with a far-right German politician. Mr. Speaker, Christine Anderson and her party's far-right, xenophobic, anti-science, pro-Putin views are well known. His carefully crafted condemnation that neither he nor his MPs will repeat publicly just won't cut it. It's time he gave Canadians real answers and apologized.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Prime Minister's office was briefed 3 weeks before the 2019 election about a candidate that was implicated in a foreign interference network. Which members of the Prime Minister's staff were present for that briefing? Their names, please.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, it is extremely important that as a Parliament, that as parliamentary committees, that as a government, and that as Canadians, we look into the issue of foreign interference. It's why at Parliamentary Committee, the Ministers of Democratic Institutions and Foreign Affairs are scheduled to appear tomorrow. PROC has heard from Elections Canada, from the Director of CSIS, from the Chief of the CSE, the Deputy Commissioner of the RCMP, the Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs, and the Deputy Minister of International Trade. And to quote the member from Carleton, for hundreds of years, the principle of ministerial accountability has been paramount in the House and in committee. We agree.
The Leader of the Opposition.
Well, if he believes that he should be responsible, then he should answer the question. Which members of his staff were briefed by CSIS that one of his candidates was implicated in a foreign interference ring? And was Katie Telford, his chief of staff, among those briefed? Yes or no?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, Canadians can well see that there are important partisan and political considerations overlaying all these exchanges in the House, which is why Canadians want us to be able to step back as a country and say what actually happened, who actually was doing their job to protect against foreign interference, and was everyone doing the right things. That's why pulling forward an independent expert to oversee the work that is being done to ensure that everything that needed to be done was done properly, and that is continued to be done is going to be important, and that's what we're proposing.
The Leader of the Opposition.
If any parties, leadership campaigns, electoral district associations, that is to say, parties and their local arms, received money directed by Beijing. Now, he used a very tiny technical term called candidate, which only applies to a limited scenario 30 days before an election. He refuses to answer about whether his party or any other received money directed by the communist dictatorship in Beijing. That we can assume that the answer, therefore, is yes. How much did his party and other parts of his party get from the communist dictatorship?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, on matters of national security, it's extremely important that we continue to give Canadians confidence that our experts and our officials are doing their job, but it's also important to protect the women and men who serve in our security agencies doing extremely dangerous work to keep Canadians safe. That's why we've created a committee where all parliamentarians from different parties can get top secret clearance and look into these matters deeply without compromising the safety of people who serve this country.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
He's not interested in protecting the safety of the people serving this country. He's interested in protecting the Liberal Party of Canada. The question was how much his party got in illegal donations funneled from Beijing. I've asked the question twice now. He refuses to answer it. He distracts and now claims that he can't tell it because it would harm national security. Give me a break. It would harm his political career. Why doesn't he tell us how much the Liberal Party or its various arms received in money from Beijing? How much?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, it is unfortunate and despicable that any member in this House would question the loyalty to Canada of any other member in this House. I understand the very real concerns that Canadians feel about foreign interference, and that's why we've created mechanisms to keep Canadians safe. But to suggest that anyone in this House isn't devoted to serving Canadians and keeping those who serve Canada in dangerous positions safe is quite disgusting.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, no drama lesson will distract from the question that I asked. The question was very clear. How much did the Liberal Party get in donations directed from Beijing? I've asked it multiple times. I find it incredible that he can't stand up and answer with a zero. I mean, if he knows for sure it didn't happen, if he's not been briefed to the contrary, he would say so right now. But he's dodging the question. He's trying to engage in a dramatic distraction. So I will give him one more chance. Answer the question. How much money did his party get from the dictatorship in Beijing? How much?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, I see the Leader of the Opposition trying to backtrack from his heinous and disgusting accusations of disloyalty to Canada of anyone in this House. And I'm pleased to see him back off from what was an absolutely despicable partisan approach. But it does go to the point that Canadians need to have confidence that the answers that they are seeking on foreign interference and on the integrity of our democratic institutions are being dealt with by experts. Now, there's two ways of doing that. One is by making sure that partisans and politicians of all parties get classified briefings on that, which the NSICOP does, and the other is to make sure independent experts.
The Honourable Member.
This is a serious issue that affects the lives of everyday people. Canadians of Chinese descent have been targeted for abuse in their own country, including right under the nose of the Prime Minister. There have been police stations set up by a foreign government in our country. He's done absolutely nothing about it. We need to know why it is he's done nothing about it. Can he tell us how many diplomats from the Chinese embassy and consulate has he expelled since learning about these police stations? How many?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, the selective partisan memory of the Leader of the Opposition is quite openly on display right now. It was just a few months ago where they were criticizing me for standing up directly to President Xi Jinping as I talked about the impacts of foreign interference in our government, in our country. I will continue to ensure that we're holding to account anyone who engages in illegal actions in Canada, including in foreign interference. We have never hesitated to take action where and when necessary, and we will continue to.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
He won't answer how many diplomats he's kicked out because the answer is zero. Even as they open police stations in our country, he won't answer that question. He won't answer whether there are members of his existing cabinet and caucus who've been implicated in foreign interference. He won't answer whether his staff has been briefed about that interference. He won't answer even whether his party received illegal money directly from the foreign dictatorship in Beijing. He won't answer any of these questions, which is exactly why we need an independent inquiry that can compel his testimony. Will he call it now?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the excessive partisanship we're seeing and this issue that is extremely serious and extremely important to Canadians is exactly why we have chosen to appoint an independent expert to make the determination on how how we can best reassure Canadians and ensure that our government and our institutions are doing everything to protect our democracy. That is exactly what we are doing. And we have seen experts say a public inquiry is necessary. We've seen other experts say it wouldn't get to the truth. That's why an independent expert will make that determination.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
He's blocking a public inquiry which would compel him to give answers. His members are blocking an investigation here at Parliament. He won't answer questions on the floor of the House of Commons. He's even got a bill that would allow him to censor the internet. It's almost as if he admires the basic Chinese communist dictatorship. Will he tell us, does he still admire the basic Chinese communist dictatorship as he so profusely said he did several years ago? Yes or no?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we're clearly seeing once again that the Leader of the Opposition is simply not serious in his approach in reassuring Canadians about institutions, about our democracy, about the integrity of our elections. That is why, Mr. Speaker, we are proposing significant and serious steps and mechanisms to make sure that independently and with expert advice, the right answers are being sought and the right answers are being shared with Canadians. That is not our answers. Those are not their answers. It is answers determined by independent panels of experts tasked with protecting our democracy.